There's some IT magic going on, and then we'll start.
Ready to go, Paul? Brilliant. Thanks so much, Paul.
Well, good morning. Welcome all to today's meeting of the Audit, Governance and Ethics Committee. Start off with apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Tucker, and we wish him well.
Sorry, Councillor who? Councillor who?
Tucker. Sorry.
Tucker, sorry, I beg your pardon.
Okay. And we also have apologies from Ian House from Deloitte, but we have Atif joining us today to take his place. Moving on, emergency evacuation procedures. Obviously, all of you at home will know the best way to get out. There's a few of us here at headquarters, and we're okay with the emergency evacuation procedures here. Moving on to declaration of interest. Does anybody have anything they'd like to declare? No? Okay. Sorry, just having a sip. Okay, today's meeting will be video recorded and live streamed onto our YouTube channel. By remaining on the Zoom call, everybody is agreeing for their images and voice recording to be posted. I'll now just read out the Zoom guidelines. This is for the benefit of the members and the public. In view of the current restrictions that COVID-19 has placed on everybody, including the Fire Authority, this meeting of the Audit, Governance and Ethics Committee will take place using Zoom this morning. To ensure the meeting goes as smoothly as possible, there are several points and guidelines that I would like to run through with members and for the benefit of any members of the public that are watching the live stream of this meeting. Once the meeting begins, attendees will be placed onto mute unless invited to speak by the chair. If members wish to speak or have a question, please indicate this by sending a message using the chat function. I hope you can all access that. This will be monitored, and at the end of each item, there'll be opportunity for members to speak in turn. I've got the wonderful Emma here helping me with that. The open section of the Fire Authority meeting will be video recorded and live streamed onto the Avon Fire Authority, Avon Fire and Rescue Service YouTube channel. By attending a meeting via Zoom, attendees are agreeing for their images and voice recording to be posted. Due to the reduction in the length of meetings, it is intended that for reports provided for information or noting, a full discussion will not take place. Please keep any mobile phones on mute to avoid interruptions and interference with sound. If I need to call a short comfort break, I will say how long that break will be for the information of attendees and those watching. The recording and live stream will remain running, but video images should be turned off as well as microphones remaining muted. On return from the break, video images should be switched back on. Thank you. That's that little bit dealt with. I'll just introduce myself. My name's Councillor Godin. I represent Hartcliffe and Withywood Ward in Bristol. And I'd like to I will go around as I see you on the screen and ask you to introduce yourself, if that's okay. Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Emma Bowen.
You're on mute, sorry.
I'm Emma Bowen, I'm the Democratic Services Assistant.
Thank you. Councillor Ash?
Hello, I'm John Ash. I'm a South Gloucestershire councillor and I represent Braddystoke South.
Thank you. Jane?
Hello, I'm Jane Williams-Locke and I'm the Corporate Assurance Manager.
Steve, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, Steve Gray, Democratic Services, Bristol City Council.
Thank you. Trevor?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Trevor Jones from South Gloucester Council and I represent Winterbourne Ward.
Thank you. Angie?
Morning, I'm Angie Feeney, I'm the Director of Corporate Services.
Danielle?
Good morning, I'm Danielle Neal. I'm the Treasurer for Avon Fire Authority.
Thank you. Vicky?
Morning, Vicky Gould, Internal Audit Manager, RSM.
Thank you. Neil?
Hello, I'm Councillor Neil Butters, Bath and North East Somerset Council, Bath Avon South Ward.
Thank you. Lynn?
Lynn Lamb, Finance Manager at Avon Fire.
Thank you. Shazia?
Morning, I'm Shazia Dyer, Acting Clerk for this meeting.
Thank you. Don?
Hi, I'm Councillor Don Davis, North Somerset, the Council for Peel and Albertsley.
Thank you. Robert?
Good morning, Robert Payne, North Somerset Council and Councillor for Weston-super-Mare Central.
Thank you. Simon?
Yes, good morning, members. Good morning, everybody. My name's Simon Shilton. I'm one of the Assistant Chief Fire Officers.
Thank you. Russ?
Hi, my name's Russ Rabbage. I'm a Senior Accountant at Bristol City Council.
Thank you. And Atif?
Hi, I'm Atif Samsudin, Assistant Manager from Deloitte.
Thank you very much. I think that's everybody. There's nobody I haven't asked to introduce themselves, is there? No, that's good. Okay, as regards voting today, what we will do, because we're not physically in the same room, is I will ask members if they wish to vote against. I will then ask for any abstentions, and then I will assume that any remaining members are voting for. Okay, so moving on to item number 5, public access. We have no statements or questions received before this meeting. Moving on to item 6, which is the annual governance statement. And Jane, I think you're presenting on this one, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report is a decision paper in relation to the 2019-20 draft annual governance statement. Under the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015, the Fire Authority is required to produce an annual governance statement which sets out how the authority will comply with these regulations. The governance statement presented to you today is in draft format and is aligned to the SITFA Solis framework delivering good governance in local government, published in 2016. The committee is asked to agree the content of the draft governance statement on the condition that paragraph 8.2 and 8.3 are updated with the head of external audit opinion when published. The committee is also asked to approve the publication of the governance statement alongside the final statement of accounts when audited. If I can ask you to turn to page 11 of your committee papers, or it's detailed as number 5 on the actual governance statement. Details are provided of the arrangements in place to ensure good governance across the organisation, including details of the committee structure, statutory roles and responsibilities, and the process of internal control. On page 17 of your committee papers, 11 of the report, a summary of the top 3 risks, corporate risks, as at the 27th of March is provided for your consideration, including the planned mitigations to be implemented during 2021. As of today's date, the current assessment of the top 3 risks is that CR02 risk reduction has reduced to a risk score of 20. CR08 financial capacity remains at 23, and CR16 health and safety remains at 21. Once all planned mitigations are in place, it is likely that each risk will significantly reduce to fall within the yellow zone as detailed in the risk matrix on page 16 of your committee papers. As a result, the impact and likelihood of these risks materialising will be low. The service leadership team also provides further scrutiny by examining in detail 2 corporate risks per month, ensuring progress is made against planned mitigations, cross-functional consideration is applied to the risk scores, and ensuring control measures are adequate to reduce the level of risk to the authority. On page 19 of your committee papers, Section 7 provides details of the head of internal audit opinion based on the areas reviewed during the 12 months ending 31st of March 2020. You will note internal audit have formed the opinion that the service has an adequate and effective framework for risk management, governance, and internal control. Internal audit have identified further enhancements to the framework to ensure it remains adequate and effective. Turning to page 20 of your committee papers, paragraphs 8.2 and 8.3 are currently highlighted for illustration purposes only and will require updating once the final accounts are audited and the external audit opinion is published. Each year, the Corporate Assurance Unit carries out a review of the effectiveness in relation to the service's governance arrangements. As a result of the review, on page 22 of your committee papers, Appendix A provides a summary of proposed enhancements to the governance framework to ensure it remains adequate and effective. I would like to clarify 2 points within the summary. Section 3.2 on page 34, the last bullet point states Avon Fire and Rescue Service to publish more information on the waste disposal contracts. This is in relation to the information we provide on the transparency page of the external website. We intend to make improvements to the transparency page, and in particular, we will enhance the information we provide on procurement and waste disposal contracts. Also, there is a reference to OSHANs on page 42 of your committee papers. This is the software package used to monitor and record health and safety data and information. It is used by the Health and Safety Unit to record incident data, risk assessments, and health and well-being information. I will ensure that I amend and further clarify those 2 points within the annual governance statement when it is finally published. Unless members have any questions, this is the end of my update, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Jane. Much appreciated. I'll move on to members' questions now, please, for Jane. I know, Don, that you had some queries, and I wondered if they've been addressed.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's only fair if you have queries of a technical nature to put them to the officers in advance, and that I did, and those have been covered. Thank you very much to Jane and to Angie for dealing with those. The only question I've still got remaining is on the risk package about reducing the numbers down, and I guess it would be useful to minute for our meeting purposes your opinion on the time frames. Now, I'm not expecting this to be specific to the day, but I think, you know, we've got our next AGEC meeting in November. You know, what direction of travel would have been achieved by November, or say by next March, and then just so we can be monitoring it. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Jane, would you like to come back on that?
Yes, we plan to bring the corporate risk register to the Audit and Governance Committee twice in a year. So we plan to bring that at the start of the year and at the end of the financial year. So around about January, if that's programmed in at that time, I'll bring the full corporate risk register to this committee, and you can see the progress made against those high risk areas.
Thank you, Jane. Don, does that answer your questions? Don? Okay, I'll take that as a
yes, thank you. So I was on mute.
no problems. Thanks, Don. Okay, now this is the first time the committee will see this draft annual governance statement, and obviously, as we've discussed, there will be changes and amendments. This will come back to us in November to be approved for publishing with the accounts. So we will have a chance to further scrutinise this and make sure the amendments are included, etc. So does anybody else have any other questions on this?
Chair.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. The top 3 risks, there's already been an alteration, which is good news, but are you going to produce a new top 3, and how are we going to treat the remainder of them? Because obviously it's no good only treating 3 and leaving the rest.
Did you want me to take this one, Jane?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, so the risks that are needed in the annual governance statement are a snapshot at a particular time. So you'll see that these are the risks as I think it was the 27th of March. So those risks will remain as they are within that document. But what we're proposing is that we add some further commentary to the bottom at the point of final publication to explain where those risks are now, and the timetabling for them to be further reduced to the yellow level that Jane explained.
Thank you. In 7.1, it's only a small thing, but there should be a comma instead of a semicolon towards the end of the first line. I mention it because it's a particularly critical paragraph.
Okay, thank you for that, Neil. And I have a message from Trevor to say that you've picked up on some typos as well. Is that right, Trevor?
That's right. And I'll pass them across to Jane after the meeting.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Just make a comment as well that it's been good that this year we've been able to bring the draft annual governance statement to this committee at a very early stage, and part of that is to make sure that you all have the fullest amount of time to capture and comment on it, because it is an important document for us. And as the chair has explained, we will be intending to bring it back in November alongside the final audited accounts for you to have a final look at that document as well. So if there are comments as we go along, or obviously a period of time until November, fresh things occur, we've got lots of opportunity to make this the best document which we're all comfortable with.
Thank you, Angie. Yeah, it's a very favourable situation in that respect. Robert, you have a question.
Yeah, it's in response to Trevor's identifying some typos. I think if we're going to approve the document now, we need to know what the typos are. They shouldn't really be changed after it's been approved. Is that correct?
What we're asking to do today is to approve it as a draft. And we're not publishing it at the moment. In terms of the typos, Trevor, do they make material changes, or are they?
No, Paul. They just need to be tidied up for to protect the authority's reputation. I mean, the classic one is an it's when it should be an it's in the first line, which is a classic because it's right at the beginning of the introduction, but there are a couple of others as well. So.
Thank you, Trevor. Robert, are you happy with that we are approving the draft and there will be changes made and we will have a second chance to scrutinise it in November?
Okay, that's fine then, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Chair,
Okay.
could I raise something under 5.2 just for information?
Yep, feel free, Neil.
Yeah, it's bottom of page 33/39. It says software will be identified to provide better analysis of performance information made available to members. What sort of time scale have we got on that? Do we know?
Okay, can anybody help me on that one?
I haven't got a time scale with me at this moment in time, but I will get that back to you at the next meeting if you would like that.
Thank you, Jane.
I think on that, Councillor Butters, it partly links to one of the discussions on the governance audit later, which is a document that Jane is working on around a corporate assurance framework, and having a further assurance framework linked to that. So a part of the system is what will be discussed later on when we discuss that audit report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie and Neil. Has anybody else got any points or questions they'd like to raise?
Just to say there's a great deal of work in here, Chairman. Congratulations to those involved.
Yeah, thank you very much, Neil, and I'll definitely second that. And as Angie pointed out as well, we will have the opportunity, because this has been prepared so much in advance, to scrutinise it again in November, just to make sure we're happy. Okay, well, I would like to move that we approve this document in draft, bearing in mind that there will be amendments. It will come back to us in November for final scrutiny of said amendments, and we will then agree to publish it alongside the accounts. But at the moment, thank you, Trevor, I've got a second on that one. At the moment, we're just approving the document in draft. So Trevor has seconded that. Can I ask if any members would like to vote against? No. Do I have any abstentions? No. I will mark that as carried then, and we will move on to item 7, which is the 2019-20 draft annual statement of accounts. And I think it's Danielle helping us with this one.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I'll go through the overview of this paper, and then I will hand over to Lynn, who is our finance lead at the fire service, and Russ, who is our technical resident expert at Bristol City Council. And I think members are aware that the finance department do have this SLA with Bristol City Council, and this is one of the areas that's covered by that SLA. I think at the end it would also be helpful for external audit, just to provide assurance and possibly an update of where they've got to with the audit. So in summary terms, the paper 7, which is on page 50 of the members' papers, provides the draft 2019-20 statement of accounts. And very much like the annual governance statement, this is a draft, and it will need to go through the final stages of the external audit. And the updated accounts will then be brought back to AJEC on the 5th of November for final review and approval. It's important for members to note the purpose of bringing the draft statement of accounts to the meeting today is to enable the fire authority to meet its public notice requirement, where we are required to publish our draft accounts to the public on or before the 1st of September. As members are no doubt aware, due to COVID, the government has extended the deadlines for the production of the final accounts and the associated external audit. And we now have until the end of November to approve and publish our accounts. The external audit commenced in July, and it will continue from the 14th of September. And this will enable final accounts to be presented to AJAC at their committee meeting on the 5th of November. At that point, Chair, I'd like to hand over to Atif, who's the external audit rep today, to see if Atif would like to say anything. And then if I can direct any questions to Lynn and Russ, please.
Thank you very much, Danielle. And just for the benefit of the members of the public, can you just explain what an SLA is?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and apologies. An SLA, a service level agreement that the Fire Authority has had with Bristol City Council. I believe we're in the 3rd year now of a 3-year SLA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Atif, would you like to come in on this, please?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Again, I'm representing Ian today, as everyone's actually on leave, and on behalf of managers as well. As you notice, we have a lot has came in July last month to start our planning and bit of working on the pensions and the rest of the audit. And we have in fortnight and week of commencing the 14, we'll be coming in back to finish off the audit, and we are in very, very close communication with Lynn and also Russ in making sure that we have everything in line on. We've been using sort of like a Connect site, which is a SharePoint, which is a base where we share all our documents and all requests to make sure that we have all our standings and our requests being closed off. As at this point now, most of our testing has been done and pretty much reviewed by the partner Ian, and hopefully by the week of the 14th, we'll be able to continue our basically the rest of the testing alongside reviewing the draft accounts as well, which is going to be reviewed by Ian in more details, as he has kind of had a look last time without the AG statements in it, and put some comments which Danielle and the team has actually make some amendments to it, I believe. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the update that I can actually give to everyone. If you have any questions, anything to add on.
Thank you very much, Atif, and thanks for stepping in for Ian. Much appreciated. Danielle, who would you like to go next? Is it Lynn?
I think, Chair, if I may suggest, perhaps if there are questions from members, if we take those questions, and obviously depending on the question, either Lynn or Russ will be able to respond. Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. Okay, do we have any questions from members, please? Neil, I believe you've got a question. Neil, I think you might be on mute.
Keeps going on. Sorry. Bottom of page 56, so 3 I have, if I may. First one here. Our latest forecast is that Avon Fire Authority could be facing a funding gap of around £2.5 million over this period, depending on planning assumptions. So obviously a little bit worrying, to say the least. So could somebody please comment on that first?
Thank you, Neil. Who would like to come in on this one?
Can Lynn please respond to that one?
Sorry, I'm frantically trying to unmute the phone. kept going back on mute again. Sorry. Yeah, so that is because we do, when we do the annual budget each year for the following year, we also do the medium-term financial strategy budget going forward for the following 3 years. And that is very much based on the information that we have at present. So for example, last year, when we did at the stage of setting the budget in February 2019 for 1920, we actually had a funding gap of about, I think it was 2 million for this current year. But obviously when we then got all the final numbers in for the budget for 2021, that didn't exist in the end. So it's very much an estimate of the financial position going forward with regard to government funding, etc., and how much we're going to get in precept non-domestic rates, and indeed how much we're going to actually spend, and those spending plans change. People very much put estimates in as to the future expectations, and that is over, the 2.5 million is over 3 years.
Okay, thank you. So we watch it, but at the moment it's not a big worry.
No, although it has to be said that we don't really know where we are with COVID at the moment.
Right.
Thanks, Lynn.
Second one, if I may, bottom of page 63. The capital programme for 2019-20 was 5841,000, and there's been a slippage of 5052,000. This will be reviewed during 2021. That again looks something we ought to be keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, again, if I may, that's probably, I know a bit about that. Obviously, the capital programme is in the remit of other managers in the organisation, and the expectation was that we would spend, there was a capital programme in place to spend, but during 1920 we had some gaps in the fleet department, so we didn't spend what we had projected to spend on new appliances, so that slipped into the following year. I believe the main supplier of appliances went out of business, so there had to be a new procurement process for supply, and so that slipped. And I understand there was some slippage on the premises capital programme as well, with the Avonmouth being delayed. I don't know the full details, though, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Lynn.
Okay, thank you.
But it does, sorry, all go into that capital remains and then just slips into following years.
Thank you. Neil, did you have any further points?
Yeah, well, the third one is rather more upbeat, if you like. Page 81, there seem to be some good figures here. 93% of respondents said they were very satisfied with the service, etc. You got that? Page 26 or 81.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I think I'm in the wrong part of the.
I think I would agree, Councillor, that is good.
Yes.
Yeah, 93% of respondents, and although the second figure is obscured by the draft, it's the ones on top of that were fairly satisfied as well. So all in all, yeah, that's very good, and thanks for pointing that out, Neil.
So
did you have
congratulations?
Thank you. Don, I think you've got a question now, please.
First of all, to echo your comments on the previous piece of work, thanks to the team for getting these figures out, and that's our whole team across us and our partners. So thank you for that. I think I will say two things, and I think these are certainly loose agenda items for this committee moving forward. I'm extremely concerned about the capital programme because the slippage every year just seems to me to be overly great. And I do understand the issue which has been highlighted around our supplier of fire appliances having ceased to supply fire appliances. Therefore, that's a technical problem which we as an authority and as a service can do little about. But I do want to have a far greater scrutiny of our capital programme and the slippage, because it does seem to me we've come to a process now where we just have the slippage every year, and there doesn't seem to me to be a sufficient trail as to why that's happening. And I think this is important for one particular reason, which I now go on to, which is what colleagues have mentioned about that funding gap, is because I'm sure you do, as I do, go to various meetings with central government in which reserves are always mentioned if we have a massive amount of reserves. And I think if we haven't got a robust policy on both capital and reserves, we are open to being told, well, you better start using those reserves rather than coming to us for funding. So there's a strategic point here in terms of the overall funding package for fire and rescue services. But I think there's also incumbent upon this committee to have a far greater grip on the capital programme moving forward, and asking for some accountability as to how it's compiled, and why the slippage is occurring. I understand slippage does occur in capital programmes. It occurs both in private and in public sector. But I do think we need to have a far better audit trail of that. And thanks Neil to raising it. The other thing around finance, I guess, is a question to colleagues, both officer and members. Do we need to start articulating the funding ask of this fire authority? Because the government is going to have a spending review in the autumn, and I'd hate it if we just waited and then complained that we haven't got much when we are not articulating, what we think our needs are. I mean the plain 2.5 million gap is as it is, and I'm sure the service will be working to look at potential things to do. But I mean, on about a £45 million budget, £2.5 million is quite a big percentage, isn't it? It's the thick end of a 5% cut in our funding, isn't it? And, I mean, we've really made significant cuts over the last 10 years as it is. So I do wonder whether we, either through the AGEC or through the AFA itself, articulate an ask of government around the funding programme we need. And and as has been mentioned, the COVID-19 has changed things significantly for us. But I mean, some of the things that we are now doing and doing things differently are going to cost us more money. So I do think we need to articulate that ask around Avon Fire and Rescue. If we don't, everybody else, every other fire and rescue service, I'm sure will be doing the same thing. And us then complaining at the end when we don't get anything, government will quite rightly turn to us and say, well, actually, we thought you're all okay if you didn't say anything. Now, how we do that, Paul, I don't know. Perhaps it's a conversation that you as the chair of this committee need to have with probably Danielle and Mick or Simon, as to how we just get a small briefing together, and articulate that document. I think it needs to be short and snappy, to the point, about some key asks. I hope that's. I've been very long-winded, so I'm going to shut up now.
Thank you very much, Don. Yeah, no, I agree on both points. Regarding the slippage, it would be nice to have more detail included, and not justification, but just transparency and reasons why, because they are quite significant amounts. In terms of the funding, and if you don't ask, you don't get kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we can either bring back and discuss at one of our meetings, or I'm quite happy to speak to Danielle and Angie about that, and then feed back to members if that's what they would like. Does anybody have any comments on those?
Sounds good to me.
Chair, a few things, if I may, just picking up on what Councillor Davies raised. I think, SLB at the moment, so our senior leadership team is doing a lot of work with finance and with our treasurer to look at our capital programme forward, and also to have a look at reserve strategy. So this is something that's very much on our radar to work through as well. And of course, we now have the capital steering group, where we also work sort of with members as well on our capital programme and where we are with that, and look in more detail at all of our project plans and our programmes, in particular around premises and fleet. So I think there are a number of things that we are doing to make sure that we've got ready information and an enhanced level of scrutiny around our capital programmes. I know that the NFCC, on behalf of the fire sector, have submitted a document to the government talking about the challenges around fire to feed into the comprehensive spending review. And I think for members who haven't seen that, that might be helpful, because it might sort of inform what you're maybe suggesting to do on behalf of the AGEC. So a suggestion would be that I would send that around to members outside of this meeting, so you can see what's gone in as a sector, because some of our challenges are not unique to Avon, they are across the sector as a whole.
Thank you, Ange. And it's good to hear that the capital programmes are a priority, and the capital steering group are looking into this. And in terms of the submission regarding the comprehensive spending review, I think that would be very helpful if we could have that circulated to members, and then we can have a discussion on that, and then decide if we want to do anything further, or if we're happy with the submission as a sector. Does anybody else have any other comments or queries regarding the statement of accounts and narrative report? Okay, no, nothing indicated. The recommendations are that we are asked to review and approve the draft 2019-20 statement of accounts to enable the fire authority to meet its public notice requirement, which is required on or before the first working day of September 2020. As has been stated before, this is the draft statement of accounts and narrative reports. So I move that we approve as is, and publish to meet the deadline. May I have a seconder on that, please? Thank you, Don. I'd like to ask if any members would like to vote against that. No, okay. Are there any abstentions? No, okay. So I will assume that that is unanimous, and we will move on to item 8, the internal audit report, governance and assurance. And I think it's Jane to present on this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report is a decision paper in relation to the findings of the internal audit review of governance and assurance, together with the recommendations and management action plan. The committee is asked to consider the governance and assurance internal audit report as at Appendix 1, review and agree the associated management action plan. In respect of the audit actions on committee terms of reference and member allocation to subcommittee roles, the committee is asked to consider and agree sending this report to the clerk for the attention of the member working group, who would recommend any constitution changes to the fire authority. Chair, if I may, I would like to ask internal audit to present their findings in full.
Thank you very much, Jane. Who would like to present on this? Is Vicky?
It would be Vicky.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. So just to update members that the version of the report that was on the website a few days ago has since been updated. So just to inform you of the minor changes following feedback around management action 2, where we raised an action around being able to align a skills matrix as well as the political balance to allocation of subcommittees. And we just felt that when reconsidered, it wouldn't be possible to be able to allocate based on skills mix as well as making sure that political balance, it would be quite a task. So the mitigation of the member training and the development programs is a sufficient mitigating control to make sure that those allocated to subcommittees have the relevant knowledge and experience to fulfill that role. So we've taken out management action 2, just to let you know. So with regards to this audit, we've given a positive reasonable assurance opinion, raised a few actions around. So the assurance framework that Jane has been putting together is good practice that we've seen across the sector. The fire sector isn't always great in this area, and so we've reflected that in the report and then given some advice, and in the appendix you'll see an example of an assurance map that we tend to see in other sectors. So for example, the NHS are quite good at extending the assurance framework onto this assurance map and implementing that across their subcommittees and across their management groups, so that you can really map out and articulate those assurances against all the risks. And that's something that Jane is looking to take forward in the future. So we've just provided some examples there. We've also raised an action where on the PRS committee terms of reference, there was a role around reviewing the financial performance, which I don't think is happening. And so when reviewing the constitution, we're just going to review whether that actually sits with that committee anymore, or whether that sits with Main Fire Authority. We did aim to talk to some Fire Authority members as part of this audit, but due to COVID, we decided to send out a questionnaire, obviously understanding that everybody is very busy at the moment. We have 3 responses and we've reflected those in the appendix. And I think one of the highlights around the knowledge gap to what we were talking about earlier around the governor training, the member training. So I'll take any questions on this report.
Thank you very much, Vicky. And if I can just say personally on the member training, I have been, we are trained on member development days, but also if it is identified that there is a training need, I've personally been sent on a couple of external courses, and if any members of the committee feel that they need training on anything, please do let us know, and we can arrange for external courses if we can't cover it internally. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Vicky on that? Don, I believe you've got a question.
I think Neil put his hand up as well, so just very briefly then. You want to go first, Neil? You want to go first? You go first, Neil. Come on.
Well, it was only a very small thing under executive summary on page 173. There's a reference to following local elections in May 2019. We've obviously had changes in 2020, and I'm just wondering if it would be appropriate to make mention of that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Neil. Yes, I think it's a bit of an oversight there, just because of things changing in regard to COVID. Don.
Thanks, Vicky. Just a couple of questions. I'm referring to your document page numbers. I'm using Basecamp, so I haven't got the full printed document in front of me. On page 5, which is a governance and assurance framework and the objectives, absolutely take your point. And I think we need to make sure that this assurance framework is incorporated into the work of all our committees. And I would suggest it certainly should be an item for the agenda of the next one of every single committee meeting, going through your report and making sure that your findings are incorporated into that. I think it isn't just for this committee, it's across the board. I'm on page 8 and 9, and I may have missed it, so forgive me. I was just a little bit confused by the design having a cross against it under the governance structure, and I wasn't wholly sure what that referred to. I may have missed it in the text. If I have, please accept my apologies. And on page 18, so I'm under scroll down on the screen. Management action 5. There's a date there of March 31st, 2021. I wondered where that had come from.
Okay, Vicky, would you like to come back on those 2
Yeah.
points?
Yeah, sure. So I think the cross with regards to compliance wasn't necessarily around the structure as such. It's so if you see in the action, it says that we will update the constitution with any non-compliance. I think that just links to the PRS committee issue around the financial. So we're basically saying compliance with the constitution. There was just that one aspect of non-compliance in terms of that committee wasn't looking at financial performance, but I think that it's not going forward anyway. So it's just the constitution needs updating. So that's where that X came in. Overall, the governance structure, when we benchmarked it against other fire authorities, did come out quite lean, and there was nothing that we kind of would suggest that you are missing or not doing. I think when we looked at others, there were some that had up to 9 committee meetings, and we just think that's overkill and too many meetings and taking up too much time for officers and members. And with regards to management action 5, it is quite a big task. So I think Jane's got a lot on her hands to get the assurance map in place. So I think that was more setting out an achievable goal rather than promising to do something and not achieving it. I don't know if Jane wants to comment on that.
Yeah.
I can comment on it first and then hand over to Jane. Our thinking is, that would be the maximum date. Obviously, we hope to achieve that earlier. We were also conscious of the reference in management action, the framework being allied to the two authorities' constitution, and therefore, as there is the constitution working group at the moment, we wanted to allow time to see what changes were made to that, to make sure that then the assurance document that Jane wasn't doing was out of line. So I hope that explains sort of why we thought March might be a good point for that. But Jane, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, if I can bring it to the committee any sooner, I will do. But it is a very big work activity, cross-mapping all of those assurance processes. So I do have a big task on my hands. So if I can get it to you sooner, I will do.
Okay, thanks all. And Jane, I think, as long as it comes by the 31st of March 21, then that will be fine. Okay, does anybody else have any other questions or queries they'd like to raise? No? Okay, well, I will move back to the recommendations, and the committee is asked to consider the governance and assurance internal audit report received, to review and agree the associated management action plan, and in respect of the audit actions on committee terms of reference and member allocation to subcommittee roles, consider and agree sending this report to the clerk for the attention of the member working group who would recommend any constitution changes to the fire authority, which is the Constitutional Review Working Group. So I'd like to move that we approve those 3 recommendations. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thanks, John. Councillor Ash. Do any members wish to vote against those recommendations? No, thank you. And are there any abstentions? No. Okay, thank you very much. We have passed that unanimously, and we'll move on to the last item on the agenda, number 9, which is the date of the next meeting. At present, it is scheduled for the 5th of November 2020 at 10:30 a.m. If we need to, we may move that slightly sooner to avoid such a long gap in between meetings. But at present, I'd like to move that the date of the next meeting is set at the 5th of November 2020 at 10:30. And can I get a seconder on that, please? Thank you, Trevor. Anybody against that date? Any? Sorry?
Okay. Sorry, say it again. That date was now?
The 5th of November 2020 at 10:30 a.m.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Bonfire night, I believe. So there may be fireworks. Are there any abstentions? No. So again, I will assume that that is unanimously agreed. And thank you all for attending, and thank you everyone who has made reports. That's the end of the meeting. And I hope you have a nice rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Chair.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you.